the question, which is on my mind too, I think is one of the big questions of our time of how do we relate to technology, the fears around technology and the challenges it creates for democracy and for other parts of our lives. Many parts of our lives is changing everything. Uh, you said you looked at some of this question and then also went back to the medieval times to look at the evolution of it. We share something about that study.
Yeah. So what really struck me with Saint Francis and the Franciscans is that they set out to be this movement that was completely off the grid. You know, they wanted to do their own thing. They wanted to live in poverty. They wanted to be in community with nature and with their fellow human beings. And they did this, and it was a big conflict with the Catholic Church because the Catholic Church was rich at the time at that point, and so any prophetic voice that was preaching poverty was disruptive to the system. What was really intriguing to me, though, was that within just one generation of Saint Francis, everybody loved the movement, so everybody started. It grew, so you had thousands of people that were now a part of it, and these folks had to live in communities, and they had to have infrastructure, um, and people were making donations. They were leaving their, they were writing wills and leaving their inheritances to the Franciscans. So the Franciscans was a movement that was birthed in poverty, but within a generation became one of the richest movements in Europe. And so now you had all these conflicts within the movement about, what do we do with all of this wealth? And what struck me was and I think it's a tension that we see over and over in history, and we see it now in a lot of our alternative communities. You have a community that sets out to be revolutionary or just even to reform things, and the question is, when it grows, how do you integrate that into society at large? And my takeaway from all of that is really, in a sense, the ability to commune with nature, the ability to commune with fellow human beings, is a form of luxury, in the sense that it depends on an infrastructure. You have to have order and stability. You have to have a working legal system. You have to have overall political structures that ensure peace. I mean, you can have communities like this in societies that are in upheaval, but it certainly isn't ideal. You look at Syria or Somalia or any country where there's a civil war going on, and certainly you have resistance movements, but it's not a situation that you want to be in. So the Franciscans, like almost all resistance movements since then, have had to deal with the challenge of needing to figure out how they were going to be a part of society at large, and how they were going to interact with political structures, how they were going to make that interface. And in that sense, I think it's a lesson that's relevant to us today, because creative communities. I mean, I think the danger is for creative communities to become isolated and not realize that, in fact, the political structure is one that they depend on, because the rule of law and predictability and safety and general security are all things that we need and we want. So if there's anything that comes through to me from that story, is to just be conscious of the fact that we need to remain engaged, and the texture and the fabric of society is both complex and fragile and needs to be safeguarded.
It's a really good reminder for me and other people, like-minded people to me too, I think, that are looking to reconnect and support nature reconnection, support alternative communities and ways of relating and healing communities, all these things that there's a lot that they depend on in terms of the infrastructure, as you said, around the society being stable. Even getting in the woods in Syria, I'm guessing, or in a lot of countries with great upheaval, and I think countries in Central America or in Africa, like the woods are not safe. To go in the woods, that
Yeah.
is the home of the rebels, the home of insurgency, is in the hills, in the woods. Just to be able to safely move about, even marginalized communities in the U.S. don't feel welcome or safe in national parks or in there's a lot of work to be done just making natural spaces more welcoming for so there's all this privilege that goes into getting to getting to go out and try and be the Buddha or to be Saint Francis or to like to just to embrace that kind of spiritual quest. I think it's woven throughout many different societies when you look at where who gets to get the level of education of the Brahmin, of the aristocrat. You know, these are the people who have left a lot of the literature to us. The great texts have been in privileged caste systems or classes. So I think that disconnecting from that reality and that truth is dangerous. I appreciate all the reminders about this, and there is emerging, I think, scholarly work too to look at what is the what's happening at these transformational festivals in terms of privilege and culture and the intersection of different technologies, a cultural appropriation that's going on that really demands our awareness, demands our at least recognition if we're going to enjoy these privileges, enjoy this space. Let's recognize, and I think it reminds me of the higher purpose of that, which is to still participate in democracy, still participate in social institutions, not just say they're all evil and dismiss them. That at some level, uh, they require our tending or our cultivation too, not just always pure escape, pure rejection. Is kind of almost an unrealistic uh, way of being. So yeah, there's just a lot there. I think that's an important message for a lot of communities that I'm part of.